Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, here to take a look at the only member of the original Team Prime lineup to lose out on a first edition rendition. Ready your scalpels as we enter the world of robot Jeffrey Combs in Ratchet. This is a pretty good ambulance mode sculpt. Any view that isn't from the front reveals its main problem in its lack of obvious paint applications. To call this toy nearly unpainted would actually be incorrect. The two large panels that make up the middle section are actually transparent blue plastic due to the windshield effect, and as a result, they eat up a ton of paint budget in order to give the illusion that only the windows are see-through. I would have happily given up transparent windows if it meant avoiding the huge amounts of white paint used on the sides of the vehicle mode by molding these two pieces in a blanche plastique. The paint versus polymer division on the white also makes Ratchet's hue a little bit uneven. Also, while they store happily in the ambulance's underbelly, Ratchet's scalpel weapons can also be pegged into the front bumper to get some crazy road warrior action going on. It looks pretty hilarious. Feel free to forget about it unless you'd like to imagine Ratchet getting himself hopped up on synth N and playing shish kebab bumper cars, though. After setting the scalpels aside, Ratchet makes an involved event out of transforming his limbs for robot mode. The arms use an intuitive and highly satisfying upper arm unfurl and lower arm roll-up that literally makes forearms out of flat panels. The legs use a great angled rotation for the feet and are marred only by those two meddlesome transparent pieces, which are both awkward to untab and cause the conversion's major cheat in where the front doors and roof go. So aside from messing with paint, they also mess with physics. Ratchet's torso simply lies in wait, housing only a well-implemented spring-loaded head reveal, and a whole lot of that cheaty chest sculpting. Prid Ratchet's robot mode is fairly accurate, if a little bit less tight and bulky than the CG model from the show. You can also see where the rest of his paint budget went after expending a lot of apps on the middle of the vehicle mode. He's still overly white to a degree, and the orange is a tad too red, but I am overall quite cool with the delivery of Ratchet's bipedal form. There is one glaring omission, though. He has no radio aerial! If a small wire could have folded up from his backpack, it would have been a perfect touch, and probably really child unsafe. Ratchet's scalpel weapons don't have any obvious robot mode storage, though there are several places they can be wedged into, thanks to their pliable plastic construction, though if you leave them in there for a while, it might make them look a bit funny. While they can be held in a rather silly manner as small daggers, their true beauty lies in how they work in tandem, with the transformation joint in Ratchet's wrist. Folding his hands down 90 degrees causes the scalpels to look like they have transformed right out of his forearms. Their sculpt even works around the shape of his thumbs. Sadly, they've gone unpainted, but do carry a lot of surface detail and a ton of play value, so you can recommend dissection and all kinds of stuff like that. The doctor's in and he's got ball joints? Well, he does have ball joints on his shoulders, with a nice cut there, so you can have his arms go all the way out like thus. He doesn't really have double-jointed elbows, but he has this joint on the top of his bicep, which can kind of give the illusion of double-jointed elbows. He's got a downward tilting wrist, so he can be all like, I broke my hand punching that guy. His neck is something that you need to do a little bit of work on. Now on mine, he's got a pretty decent range of posability, and it doesn't force his head to do anything that it doesn't want to. That's in part because I actually scraped out a bunch of plastic from the inside of his front collar. If you don't, his chin tends to butt against it, and you'll have to kind of tilt his head a bit to turn it sideways. The way that I've done it, you can kind of tilt his head back down once it's sideways, and anyway, if you have an X-Acto knife, it's not too hard to do. Just shave out the inside of that collar and he'll be good to go. He's got a waist joint, which was something that was actually really easy to miss. I know at least one person I talked to, and possibly myself, didn't realize he had a waist joint until an accidental bump caused that to happen, and we were like, hey, that's not symmetrical. He's got ball-jointed hips and a thigh swivel. There are no real limitations here. He technically has, this is going the other direction, he technically has a leg panel that's easy to bump out of place. He also technically has a double-jointed knee, but it's hard to get much of a double-jointed range out of it. That's about as far as the knee bend goes. He doesn't really have an ankle joint. His foot moves up and down, but not in a way that's really helpful, and it's been sculpted to stand at a slight A stance, which I think is a pretty cool thing. If there is no ankle tilt, at least that allows the guy to stand solidly in a more natural pose. So, Ratchet's pretty posable. He also has, actually, this one's a bit less intentional and a bit less useful, but his shoulders can also move like this, and that's kind of cool. They're supposed to be kind of locked in here, but if you do want his arm back slightly, you have the option. So he's not missing anything mission critical. The waist joint really helps, and none of his joints really have any kind of detrimental limitation to their range, so I'd give the Doctor one scalpel up. In Poseability. I mean, not like he sucks or... Let's just keep going. Ratchet, much like his Prid Peer knockout, has the curse of looking really unpainted despite having a bunch of paint apps. However, the physical qualities of his sculpt, transformation, and gimmicks all outshine this one big weakness. He was a toy to truly end the fear that Prid would be a dumbed-down line in comparison to First Edition, able to stand alongside the rest of the FE Team Prime quite nicely. With several waves of Deluxes released after him, I feel Ratchet has maintained a high position in the line, and would absolutely recommend picking him up. If the coloration issues are still getting to you, I would say that you should check out ReproLabel.com's offerings as far as fixing that up. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I am positively tickled by the presence of a robotic Jeffrey Combs in my collection. If only there were a third-party lab coat and mechanical David Gale head accessory set on the market. Oh well.